Chapter 5, Communications. Your first objective is to find the components of interpersonal communications. Interpersonal communication characteristics include the following: casual language, casual nonverbal cues, and frequent changes of speaker and listener roles, and spontaneity. Tone can change based on the perception of the two parties. A company officer must be able to understand the importance of message and feedback from company personnel. Your 5 basic elements of communication are as follows. Sender, the person who initiates the message using both verbal and nonverbal communications. 2. Message, the content the sender is trying to communicate, which may consist of information intended for multiple human senses. 3. Receiver, individual or individuals to whom sender is attempting to communicate. 4. Feedback to sender, which is the reaction of the receiver to the message and tone. Verbal feedback shifts the receiver and sender roles. It allows confirmation of the message and assessment of the receiver's understanding. Finally, interference is anything that may prevent the receiver from completely understanding the message. The sender is responsible for communicating information in such a manner that the receiver will understand it. All communication takes place within the large frame of reference. The sender encodes a message based on their education level, position of authority, personal or ethical background, and other characteristics. The receivers decode the message based on similar characteristics. When the sender takes characteristics into account, the receiver are more likely to understand the message clearly. The receiver responds to senders through feedback, and that may be verbal or nonverbal. When the sender pays attention to feedback, they can modify the message to improve the communication process. Interference can be encountered when sending or receiving a message. It is important to pay attention to the feedback to ensure that your message is getting received. Failure to actively monitor feedback can be a major cause of interference. Senders need to pay attention to the receivers, and the receivers need to pay attention to the sender. For communication to be effective, both the sender and the receiver must agree on the purpose. A shared purpose can create an agreement. In some cases, the purpose must be explicitly stated to ensure both parties understand it fully. Situations that involve influencing actions of a subordinate. This requires that the subordinate understand that the purpose of the conversation involves a change in their attitude or behavior. There are 5 general purposes for interpersonal communication. 1. Learning, which is acquiring a knowledge or a skill. 2. Relating, establishing a new relationship or maintaining an existing one. 3. Influencing, control, direct, or manipulating behavior. 4. Playing, creating a diversion and gaining pleasure or gratification as well with positive humor. Finally, number 5, helping, which is attending to another person's needs or consoling someone in a time of tragedy or loss. Let's look at the verbal components. Company officers must use words that accurately symbolize images that they are trying to convey. Always beware of audience or receiver. Word selection, particularly important when speaking to people who do not have a shared experience with the speaker. Avoid technical language and fire service jargon when speaking with such groups as the public, elected officials, and media, or others from outside agencies. Avoid language that might be considered offensive, gender biased, or racist, or otherwise stereotyped. Building strong verbal communication skills, which is engaging in a dual perspective. Be aware of the receiver's frame of reference and recognize the difference. Attempt to relate rather than diminish it or make fun of it. Take responsibility for personal feelings and thoughts. Use language that is I-based, I think. Avoid you-based language. You disappoint me. Demonstrate the ownership of feelings. Show respect for other feelings and thoughts. Avoid applying personal feelings to another person. I'm sorry you have to go through this, rather than I know how you feel. Try to gain accuracy. Clarity in speaking. Avoid abstract language and generalization. Beware of special needs of the receiver. For example, someone that is hearing impaired. Speak slowly to allow lip reading. Do not exaggerate lip or mouth movements. Avoid speaking, addressing problems while angry or emotional. When you're emotional, it makes things very difficult to get across in an understanding manner. Research indicates nonverbal communication transmits 93% of any message. 50% is through body language, and 38% is through vocal tone and inflection. 7% of a transmitted message is actually the verbal communication. Elements of non-verbal communication include body language, vocal tone, volume, and personal appearance. Nonverbal projects a person's self-perception, emotional state, approachability, and cultural background. Eye contact is very important. Maintain eye contact while speaking. Modify durations when appropriate. Scan the room. Good eye contact conveys self-confidence, honesty, trust, and credibility. Avoiding eye contact can indicate deceit, dishonesty, insecurity, and anxiety. Also, a function of cultural background must be appropriate to the situation, relationship, and culture. Too much can be damaging in wrong contexts and intimidating in others. Native American and Asian societies may see eye contact as disrespectful. Facial expressions can show happiness, sadness, surprise, fear, anger, and disgust, and they must match the verbal message. Gestures. Identify control gestures and annoying or distracting to others. Used to emphasize and illustrate the message, and they can be very useful in high noise situations. Posture. Maintaining good posture when standing or sitting in front of a classroom assembly. Sitting and standing erect conveys confidence and authority. Slouching or standing with stooped shoulders makes a person appear insecure, disinterested, or intimidated. Poise. Present image of confidence. Authority through nonverbal elements. Good posture and calm approach, and it will develop as confidence grows. Vocal characteristics should be appropriate to the message and situation. Slowly, with varying in pitch for emphasis, can help get the message across. Use appropriate volume and dictation to be understood. Vocal interference. Eliminate filler words such as or like, and emphasize phrases such as you know, and things like that, etc. can be very distracting and interfere with the message. Company officers with a regional or cultural accent may need to closely monitor their speech to make sure the audience can understand them. Personal appearance. Professional appearance at all times is a must. Set an example. Require subordinates to maintain their professionalism. Touch. You need to be aware of because it can be positive and it can be negative. Proximity. Be aware that different cultures have different interpretations of how close people should be when they interact. Learning objective number 2. Recognize the importance of listening skills in interpersonal communication. Listening. As role models for their personal company officers must practice good listening skills. Listening, unlike simply hearing, is an active process that includes attending, understanding, remembering, evaluating, and responding. Attending. Focusing on the speaker and ignoring distractions. Ensure the environment provides as few distractions to the listener's ability to attend as possible. Suggestions for improving attending steps. Look at the speaker when possible. Think about the speaker and what is being said. Visualize the situation or event the speaker is talking about. Wait until the speaker has finished delivering the message before responding. Listening to verbal messages and observe nonverbal messages. Understanding. Decoding the message and assign meaning to it. Organize the message into a logical pattern. Interpreting nonverbal cues. Asking questions to clarify meaning. Remembering. Retaining information in the short term and then long-term memory. Ways to aid in remembering can be taking notes, repeating information back to the sender, using mnemonics, and asking questions about unclear information. Evaluating, which is critically analyzing information to determine how accurate it is, or to separate fact from opinion. To effectively evaluate a message, a listener must draw on their own personal experiences, as well as assess credibility to the speaker. Finally, responding, which is indicating to the sender that the message or information has been understood or requires more explanation. Responses may be verbal or nonverbal. Verbal, such as asking questions or requesting more information, is a good example. Nonverbal, such as sleeping in class or a puzzled-type look on one's face. Company officers should listen to speeches or presentations. Assess the speaker's strengths. Repeating key elements of a speech or presentation is a good way to develop better listening skills. Before small groups, meetings, or individual counseling sessions, remove the barriers to listening in the room where the meeting will take place. Barriers may include noise-producing equipment or visual distractions such as posters on the walls. Wall decorations in classrooms should supplement the course material and should not distract or take away from it. During training exercises, try to identify barriers to communication. Over the radio and at command post. Objective number 3, explain the role of oral communications in the company officer duties. Oral communication is the process of engaging with individuals or groups using a verbal medium. Company officers utilize oral communication to communicate with the crew, conduct training sessions, deliver presentations, and communicate during emergency situations. Fear of public speaking can be overcome through practice, public speaking classes, and organizations such as Toastmasters, as well as the instructor training program. Daily communication with the crew. The company officer communicates orally with members of the crew on a daily basis. Basic rules of interpersonal communication apply to these communications. Daily oral communications include issuing crew assignments, assigning tasks, passing along information, and receiving reports, as well as career counseling. Company officers frequently organize and conduct company-level training sessions for their personnel. They may be assigned to training duties within the Department Training Division from time to time. Oral communication skills are critical to imparting knowledge, describing skills, issuing commands, and critiquing training. State, federal agencies, and community colleges provide instructor training programs for company officers and cover such topics as learning principles, instructional planning, development and use of training materials and equipment, presentation method and skills, and classroom instruction, as well as conducting training evolutions. As such, testing and evaluation. Delivering speeches and presentations. The primary types of formal speeches and presentation for company officers include persuasive, informative, and instructional. Company officers will most often make persuasive, informative, and instructional type speeches. Persuasive speeches. They may be difficult to develop and can be the most important speech an officer can give. They describe a problem and supply a solution to the intended cause of change. Following can serve as a basic outline for persuading a group. 1. Gain the audience attention with an introduction. 2. Describe the problem and demonstrate a need for a change in the current situation. 3. Present best solution and provide information and evidence to illustrate how to accomplish the goal. 4. Describe the best solution, where it has been successful and used before. Explain an example of the results, how it will affect members of the audience. And 5. Provide the audience with the basic steps needed to accomplish the change. Basis of the conclusion of the speech. The action steps must be easy and manageable. So essentially, at the end of your speech there, you're going to give them the tools and the directions that they need to get the job done. An informative speech is the easiest to develop when supporting data is compiled and analyzed. Company officers use these speeches to provide status reports, describe events, give project updates, provide unit learning training, and educate the public and media. Topics the speech covers classifies them as informative. Ideas. Topics the speech covers classifies them as informative. For example, ideas to explain the principal theory and concepts. Objects to explain a tangible object. Procedures to describe how something works or outline a procedure. People to provide a general overview of a person's life or may focus on one specific event. And events to describe an actual event. Informative speech principles. Adapt the topic to the audience. Motivate the audience to listen to the speech. Use redundancy. Use simple is better concept. Organize the topic in a logical manner. Use clear transitions to move the listener through the different topics, and use both verbal and nonverbal references to reinforce key ideas. Use an even flow to deliver the information. Build on the familiar and use visual aids sparingly. A report presentation provides information such as the project status report and proposed policy changes. Persuasive speech skills may be used during budget request presentations to persuade appropriate government board members to adopt it. Public relations speeches help keep the public informed, address the community concerns, and may be informative or persuasive. They must be prepared, maintain positive and non-combative attitude. Public information speeches may need to speak at prearranged press conferences or impromptu interviews at an instant scene. The media interview can be challenging, and the officer should work with the media, be honest, and of course follow the organization's policies and procedures. Oftentimes, your public information officer or PIO is ideal for this situation. They are designated in some departments and are assigned on large instances. Sometimes the company officer should direct questions to a PIO if one is available. Otherwise, they may have to take on that responsibility. So let's look at the speech and presentation process now. There are 9 key steps for you. Focus on your intended audiences. Canned speeches or presentations prepared can be ineffective, and each audience in each occasion is different. So sometimes tweaking is necessary. Previous given speeches can be modified for similar audiences and occasionally can be reused. Steps for preparation. First, need to select the topic. 2, determine the purpose. 3, generate ideas. 4, develop the central idea. 5, gather supporting evidence. 6, organize the speech. 7, rehearse the speech. 8, deliver the speech. And finally, step 9, evaluate the speech. Objective 4. Explain the role of written communications in the company officer's duty. Written communication may have to prepare written communications such as reports, press releases, letters, memos, and emails, meeting agendas, minutes, personnel evaluations, policies, and procedures are all examples of something a fire officer 1 may have to do. They must be accurate, concise, and professional in appearance. Appearance and the quality of the document gives the reader an impression of the ability and the credibility of the company officer and the organization. Some officers may have clerical staff to assist with development of writing of a final document. Most company officers have to research, draft, finalize, and edit each document that carries their signature. Technical or business writing courses can help assist in mastering effective written skills. Be aware that any form of written communication can be considered public record and may be used in legal proceedings. So be careful when you write it down and make sure that it looks professional and, of course, spelled correctly. Documentation organization. The first step in writing any document is determining the audience, the scope, and the purpose. Basic organization of the document outline using such things as audience definition, scope, purpose, and statement. Company officers must be familiar with their organization's policies and procedures for organizing written documents. Some organizations have very specific directions for document organization. Audience may be individual, internal, group, or external audiences. Keep the document audience focused, written to the needs, concerns, and levels of understanding of the readers. Scope, the subject. How broad or narrow the coverage is supposed to be. And purpose. Why is the document being written and what the writer wants to accomplish. Outlines may be required for technical or lengthy documents. They may follow the same format as a speech or standard training lesson plan of introduction, body, conclusion. It may include additional main points. Smooth transitions help the flow. Sometimes the authority having jurisdiction may have templates, word processing programs, or have built-in outlining functions. They help establish a logical flow. The strongest points should be at the beginning and support each point with additional data. Common technical writing practices require that outlines must be balanced with a minimum of 2 points under each heading. Parallel headings in structure matching noun and verb forms must not exceed of logic in clear writing. Each paragraph needs to contain a topic sentence, which controls content of the paragraph. They may occur at the beginning, middle, or end of a paragraph. Paragraphs should be numbered depending on the number of subdivisions in the outline. Very long paragraphs tend to slow the reader. Short ones create an impression of a choppy, disjointed document. On average, it should be between 75 to 125 words. Topic sentences plus 4 or 5 supporting sentences are appropriate. Transitional ideas are used to tie paragraphs together and help maintain the flow and rhythm of the document. Paragraph transitions. Transitional words usually come at the end of one paragraph and then at the beginning of the next paragraph. Common transitions used at the end of a paragraph to indicate summation are briefly and finally. In any case, in any event, in conclusion, in short, and in summary are also good examples. On balance and on the whole, and to summarize are other great examples. Transitions at the start of a paragraph. Show contrast or qualifications. Examples: on the contrary, however, yet, but nevertheless, in spite of. Indicating continuity. Examples such as besides, furthermore, in other words, next, to begin with. Show cause and effect. Examples: thus, consequently, as a result, so that, and therefore. Indicating exemplification. Examples: for example, for instance, to illustrate, and namely. Text development. Writing guidelines that assist in development. Be clear. Get to the point. Use a minimum of words to convey the message. Write in a conversational tone, but avoid slang or colloquial expressions. Use a friendly and positive tone. Use correct and understood words, terms, and phrases. Avoid jargon. Avoid long sentences and numerous commas. Write in an active voice. Use parallel structures. Always proofread before finalism. Have someone else proofread. Use bullets, numbers, and other indicators for key points. Use appendices for additional information. And retain a copy of the document. So let's look at specific document types. Company journals and diaries. They may be hard copy or digital. Their functions. They document activities of the company for each shift. Serve as a pass-along log. Identify equipment tagged out of service. Identify public concern to forward senior staff. Documents internal occurrences requiring further actions. And keeps ongoing records of the company. Memos and email messages. Memos are a quick and a simple way of transmitting a message within an organization. They're brief and describe what, when, where, who, why, and sometimes how. They provide chain of communication evidence of an action. Generally written digitally. Remember, memos and emails are considered to be public record documents. Memos are generally sent digitally rather than as a hard copy. Documents in interoffice mail. Methods for writing memos and emails generally the same. Workshops and courses are available to help you with this. Stay within the chain of command when sending. Proper etiquette enforcement. Training, monitoring, and email policy provides professionalism, efficiency, and liability protection. Email content, use, and distribution guidelines can prevent unnecessary legal actions. Avoid the use of personal email accounts for business-related emails, which can eliminate the liability for both individual and the organization. Always keep in mind that email accounts are open for public record and are available through the Freedom of Information Act. A memo or an email may have one of the several purposes, such as requesting information, providing a situation report, issuing a hazardous warning, or notifying personnel about a meeting. General guidelines. Keep them short and to the point. Lengthy or wordy emails may be ignored. Address only one issue. Never string the emails together and use multiple ones. Give the following 6 pieces of information: who, what, when, where, why, and how. General formats. Pre-payment memos forms allow a writer to simply fill in the blank, and often an organization will have these. If not, there are computer-generated templates that allow the writer to insert the information into the form. Save the finished product under an appropriate name and mail it electronically and print it for distribution. Value. Ensure strong, professional image when proofreading. Look for correct spelling, correct punctuation, grammar, neatness, and a consistent format. Cautious about the content can create embarrassing legal difficulties. Never put into writing anything that cannot be made public. Do not use memos or emails for criticism, reprimands, or personal communications. Never use sexist, racist, or inappropriate language. Always have memos and emails proofread before sending. Emails cannot be withdrawn once sent and will exist forever in the virtual world. Letters are generally used with persons, groups, and agencies outside the organizations. They are often longer and more formal. Often represent the entire organization rather than a specific branch or a section. Content may be similar to a memo, email, or a report. They should be professional, flawless, and the writer should proofread the letter, review for action the content, and have the superior approved letter when necessary. Most organizations provide some form of official stationery. The accepted format. You should have a heading, an opening, a body, and a closing. General considerations. Consider the tone of the letter. Be sincere. Make the reader centered and audience focused. Express praise easily and use please and thank you. Make personal when possible. Reports. A significant amount of company officers' time is writing reports. Public record. Stick to the fact of the incident. Retain a copy, including notes, which are subject to be reviewed as part of litigation. Personal notes can be subpoenaed and may provide beneficial if the writer is called to testify. Form-based reports. Most company officers complete form-based reports on a daily basis, such as incident reports, entry reports, fire investigation reports, training reports, and internal or external inspection reports, and attendance reports. Write specific information in spaces and fields. Requires legibility, accuracy, completeness, and objectivity. State the facts, not opinions. Opinions are considered subjective. Narrative may be the result of a form report. They may be generated as part of a project analysis. Topics may include staff report, technical report, detailed incident reports, and resource allocation analysis. They are written in essay form. First step, determine the purpose of the report. Supply. Required information needed at a specific time or at a predetermined schedule. Provide a report that informs the audience of the progress on a project. Next, decide who the intended audience will be. Determine the amount of details used, format, and tone of the report. Annual reports. Formal, with details of cost, service, and needs. Brief project updates are another example, which are short, informal, include only information developed since the last report. Professional jargon should be limited to internal audiences and not used for readers outside the organization. Then determine the format for the report, types of narrative report. Justification. Focus on why a certain course of action was taken or should be taken. Begin with situation or a problem and provide solutions to the problem. Steps taken to gain the solution. Recommendations. Progress, in progress, and justification, which combines the two forms. A description is also appropriate. With purpose and format, determine the topic is and thoroughly research it. All right, gang. I know this chapter is getting a little long, but that's okay. We're in the home stretch now. So let's take a minute and look at policies and procedures. And they are similar, but a little different. So here is our definitions, basically. Where a policy is a guide to organizational decision making, and it originates with the top management, and then of course it's disseminated to lower levels. A procedure actually is a detailed plan of action. The difference basically is in writing the steps to follow for a procedure, as a policy is more of a general blanket. So company officers may be called upon to assist in developing or revision of policies and procedures. A majority of the fire emergency service organizations have policies and procedures, and such things as SOPs, SOGs, policy and procedure manuals, general orders, you name it, we have something for everything in the fire service. Now, with written policies and procedures, it should contain, the mission statement, responsibility, and authority, who, what, when, where kind of stuff. In this particular text, they define policies as what must be done, and then I said, procedures are the step by step. So with that, procedures, your basic format is a statement of purpose, a statement of scope, a contents page, and then the procedures and appendices. Now, each agency identifies basic information found at the top of each page to assist in navigating the document. And the basic information usually includes a subject, which is what the policy or procedure is about, the policy itself, which has some sort of numbering system or some way to track, identify it, and usually a date, so you can see when it's been enacted, and revisions as well. With that, they're going to have probably a supersede, like this procedure number replaces version XYZ. And it should have some sort of approval where you have the chief or the commissioner, chairman, whoever's in charge, where they approve this procedure memo. And then a distribution, which is a list of the people who are going to get it. Usually they put like a blanket, all employees, all suppression employees, officers, whatever is applicable. Also, you need to look at revisions with your policies and procedures. It's a good idea to make sure they're revised periodically. You should have a master list of a manual that has all the policies and procedures in it. Obviously, digital forms are always good, and of course, having them dated. So you can kind of look and say, well, this procedures or policy has been out since the 1980s. Let's see if it's still something we need to keep going with, or if we need to tweak it or change it a little bit. And I can notice, for example, like tattoos. And that seems to be something that in public safety and the fire service, it kind of comes and goes depending on the people at the top. It's like some days it's okay to have tattoos visible, other days not so much. You got to keep them covered. So that's just kind of an example, or grooming policies. And then you may have other things that pop up, like in this day and age, social media, technology use, things of that nature. You may have to put a general policy or procedure about that as well. Another document that's out there, which this is really not a fire officer one duty, but you may be asked to kind of help get some of the legwork or information up for, is an RFP, which is a request for proposal and bid specification. So when you're working for a government entity and over a certain dollar amount, and I apologize, I don't remember the exact amount, whether it be a job or a gear contract or a fire truck, the governments are required to send out an RFP. And basically they put out there saying, okay, I'm looking to buy, say, a fire truck, and it should have these specifications and these requirements. So it gets put out there for the general public, so to speak, or the private industries, and then the private industries will look at it and say, okay, this is what I can do to meet most or all those needs, and this is how much it's going to cost. Then those bids come back in, and the powers to be kind of mull them over, look at it, and in theory they go with the lowest bid. Or if they go above the lowest bid, then they have to justify it, saying, okay, well, the lowest bid is good, but we're going to go with bid number 2 because they meet more of our demands. And that's kind of how an RFP goes. But at the fire officer 1 level, they may ask you to do research on new equipment, new specifications or standards, and kind of help put the facts and figures together. So finishing up with Objective 5 now, and this to me is obviously one of the most important parts of communication in the fire service. We're going to talk about the importance of incident scene communication. Obviously, face-to-face is the preferred method, but effective scene communication usually requires radios or other type devices. So when we're looking at radios, we're talking about, of course, our base radios, or mobile radios, portable radios, and repeater systems. So your mobile radios are basically things in your fire trucks, ambulances, battalion cars, things of that nature. Your base radios are the ones that are located at the station. And then, of course, your portable radios are the ones that you carry on your person at the scene. And in order to get the radio waves and signals to all of them, you may have repeater systems that relay, of course, the radio frequency from the 911 center or from your officer to your other people on scene. With the repeaters, though, there's a lot of departments now where radio communication in certain areas can be rough, or let's say you have a building that's got a lot of concrete or something of that nature. What they do in those instances is get a repeater, and a lot of times they have these mobile repeaters that are basically hooked up to like a battalion chief vehicle, and it kind of makes your own little hot wire mobile radio station there, so to speak, that allows, of course, the frequencies to be transmitted through the walls and such. Now, when you're talking about radio frequencies, you have all your different TAC channels, and you should have one overall frequency for 911 dispatching calls. And then in theory, that call should be shifted over to a TAC channel. That way you keep the main channel open for, dispatch. But depending on the jurisdictions, a lot of times they just stay over the main dispatch channel. In theory, again, they talk about small operations, you should have single frequencies. And in large operations, you're going to have multiple frequencies. And when you're looking at the instant command system in the NIMS recommendations, they recommend a gazillion radio frequencies. So if you have a big operation, you'll have, say, one fire engine crew, and those all individuals are on their own frequency talking to the officer. And then the officer will switch over to a different frequency to talk to, the next person in the chain of command. And it kind of goes like that. So that's how it kind of spreads out, where you have numerous radio frequencies. But in theory, it's supposed to keep communication open and free. You're not crowding the radio waves with 10 different groups trying to relay information. So it does make it a little bit of a hassle, so to speak, to figure out what's going on. But in a sense, you're only having to talk up to one person or down, so to speak. All right, some other communication devices, and then we'll come back to radios here in a minute. Anyway, so land-based phones can be used obviously for dispatching information. Cellular phones are quite popular nowadays. And I would like to say, with the cellular phones and smartphones, there's all kind of things out there now that are used in terms of apps. Like, for example, Active 911 is an app that can be used on any smartphone, Apple, Android, whatever the case may be. And it basically is kind of like the mobile data terminals, where the dispatch center can basically tone individuals out. It gives you the location of the call. It gives you patient information, of course, dispatch times, case numbers, all that kind of stuff. And of course, you can even get routing just by hitting a button, and it takes you to the map so you can get to the call. So really, cell phones have come a long way in helping people get the calls and the information and the updates out. Satellite phones, fax machines, I think, are going the way of the Model T Ford. And then, of course, internet, wireless broadband, and pagers. Pagers are still out there a little bit with the volunteer departments. But again, I think those are starting to fade away with the advancements in cellular technology and apps. Now, I did talk about the mobile data computers, and here's a good picture of one here in the fire truck. A lot of times those are coming in the tablets now. That way they can take the tablet out and start doing paperwork on EMS runs or things of that nature. Get signatures for refusals, real-time information on pre-plans, fire drawings, things of that nature. You may also get some geographical information systems, GIS folks, mapping, global positioning systems, GPS, which again, you used to have the big, and I say big, they were, the size of a stapler or something of that nature. I can remember having those in the fire truck where, you need to, you have the GPS, make sure it's there every shift, costs a fortune, and it will give you your exact latitude and longitude so you could relay it to, say, a rescue helicopter or something that was coming in. Of course, nowadays, you just have to pull out, again, your smartphone, go to the compass, you hit a button, and bam, you get your own latitude and longitude. Other communication type devices and basically your ARIES folks, your amateur radio operators, are great. They're a great backup. So let's think about this. If you had a tornado or some sort of other natural disasters that comes through and it starts knocking out cell towers and telephone lines, you may be out of luck with your primary medium of communication. So in order to get the needed information out to the rescue people and vice versa, you may need CB radios or, the ham radio operators to get the information out. So that's a great way to have a backup or redundancy in your jurisdiction in case things were to happen. And it's also a good way to involve the community, maybe even make them a CERT team, citizen emergency response team, to help facilitate. And that works great, especially in smaller jurisdictions that are kind of hurting for, excuse the expression, manpower or help. When I'm talking about, of course, communications, no matter what medium you're using, you need to have interoperability. And after 9/11, when the towers came down, that was never more abundant um, than there, because you had all these different jurisdictions coming in, and all of them had radios, but they didn't have each other's radio frequencies, so it made it very difficult to communicate. So you really need to have a way to hotwire or have the other people's frequency or some sort of community channel between your neighboring jurisdictions. That way you ensure that communication is going to be timely and effective. And not just with fire service, but also your police service, animal control, public works. We all need to be able to communicate somehow, some way. So we need to make sure that not only do we have interoperability with our neighbors, but within our own jurisdiction as well. A lot of times when you make the rank of officer and you're starting to talk on the radio more to dispatch, supervisors, other units, you have a bad habit of swallowing the radio and sounding like excuse the expression, a weirdo. So there's 5 C's that they want you to consider. One is being concise. Say exactly what you mean. Think about it. Say it to the point. Make sure you speak clearly. Enunciate words. Don't be, cramming the microphone in your mouth, because that's not going to make it come out any clearer. It'll actually distort it and make it worse. Hold it away. Take a minute and breathe and speak. Talk, of course, with confidence, and then control and capability. Concise clarity and confidence are pretty self-explanatory, but I want to talk about what they mean by control. And control is the instant commander and the telecommunicator should follow established radio protocols requiring the receiver to repeat the message back to the sender, which reduces the chance of misunderstanding. So make sure it's not a free-for-all on the radio, that the message is sent, the message is reiterated, the command, the order, whatever the case may be, and there are no confusions. And then finally, the capability there, it is effective communication depends on the capability of the sender and receiver. The capability is not limited to technical proficiency. It also includes the ability to communicate, listen effectively, and initiate control. And to me, this is the big one right here. Initiate control. Take control of the scene. Remain calm under stress. And of course, follow um, established radio procedures. If you start pinging out on the radio, it's going to make it very difficult for individuals to hear you and get you what you need. So take a minute, collect yourself, then speak. So, like with anything else, you need to be familiar with your equipment, and a radio is just another piece of equipment. So know the limitations of the radio, convey essential information only on it, of course giving direct orders, and practice. And know how and where and when to use your radio. and know when and where it will work. Sometimes in certain jurisdictions you have those areas that are, quote, the black hole, where it makes it hard to get communication in and out. Okay, so we're finally at the summary now. Company officers must be effective communicators in routine activities and in emergency situations. Written communication should be accurate, professional in appearance, complete, and understandable to its audience. Communication during emergency events is essential to safety, and company officers play a pivotal role in distributing information. Okay, gang. So if you have any questions, again, you can email me at aroberts@athenstech.edu, or you can call me in the office at 706-357-0162. Thank you very much.